Sugar Cookie Day was my little piece of joy at George W. Hill Correctional Facility. Twice a week, we'd get 2 sugar cookies along with some beans and a mystery meat patty. In a place where every day felt the same, those cookies were like a small taste of freedom. Trying to keep my ever-expanding midsection in check, I'd often trade an entire breakfast tray just for another inmate's cookies. Only the cookies. Unless you had ramen noodle seasoning packets to liven up your meals, jail food was about as flavorful as cardboard. But those cookies? They were different. There's something strange about everyone eating the same bland food, day after day. It makes the air feel heavy, like even your insides match everyone else's. You could silently pass gas and no one could really tell who did it. "You! That's nasty," was a typical reaction, even though we all knew we were dealing with the same thing. It's funny how, even in a place like this, something as small as a cookie can bring a bit of light into your day. Back to the cookies. Those cookies were little circles of pure comfort in an otherwise cold and dreary place. Every week I looked forward to them like they were a gift. In a way, they were. A simple, sweet reminder that even in the worst of circumstances, there can be small moments of happiness. Some inmates didn't care for the cookies and would give them away, jokingly saying things like, "You're crazy for loving those cookies so much." But in here, where joy is scarce, I clung to anything that made me feel human. Tensions had been running high between different groups on the block for days. I later learned that some of the guys felt they were better than others, leading to minor conflicts. These fights were usually kept hidden from the correctional officers, making it both dangerous and, in a twisted way, almost amusing. When the solid metal cell doors locked, they stayed locked until a CO opened them from an elevated platform. So when 2 inmates decided they couldn't stand each other anymore, they'd lock it in. They'd enter a 6x10 concrete cell to settle their differences. Once it was over, they were stuck together until a CO came to unlock the door. I'd imagine one guy sitting there, battered and bruised, while the other caught his breath. Then one would say, "Hey man, can you get the door open?" "Yeah, sure. You all right?" Back to the cookies. On this particular day, a food fight broke out. One inmate, in a moment of anger, walked past another who had already been served and knocked his tray off the table. I watched in disbelief as his meat patty and precious cookies slid across the floor. Within seconds, chaos erupted. Cookies were flying everywhere. While the others were caught up in the madness, all I could think about was the waste of those precious cookies. I glanced up at the bubble, hoping a CO would intervene. The CO on duty was sitting with his back turned, eating his lunch. Suddenly, as if he realized what was happening, he spun around, choked on whatever he was eating, and leaped from his chair to get help. Knowing what was coming, I joined the others, lining up against the wall, watching as the scene unfolded. The noise, the chaos, it was like something out of a movie. Ever the opportunist, with all eyes on the fight, I quickly darted over to an empty table of untouched trays and started collecting cookies, stuffing them into my pockets as fast as I could. I repeat, the trays were untouched. I'm not a complete scumbag. Returning to my spot on the wall, the other inmates laughed and shook their heads at me. One of them signaled for me to cover my mouth and nose with my t-shirt. I knew what was coming next. Seconds later, the main door to the block burst open with the force of a small army as canisters of mace were released. An orange mist filled the block, and I clutched my sugar cookies like they were the most valuable things in the world. Fortunately, by that point, the fighting had mostly died down, and the situation was quickly brought under control. The dogs barked louder than the mace, though they never had to be released. Lying face down, I watched as one by one, each man was cuffed and hauled off. Back in my cell moments later, I unloaded my pockets with a smile. The entire block went on a 72-hour lockdown, but I didn't mind. The scene had been intense, and in my own way, I felt like I'd triumphed, because in the end, I won all the cookies.